And I really hope all the fresh grads out there and new hires out there actually understand what proactive is now. So nobody expect you to come in with bombastic ideas. Don't worry, we understand you just graduated. Okay. But on the other hand, we expect you to ask questions based on your job. Be curious about how can you want to learn and further develop yourself better in a step-by-step manner. And I really like this. Be prepared with the culture. It's okay to ask. Hi everyone, welcome to the Work Inspires podcast, the people's podcast for life, career, and business. So today's topic is actually in relation to last week's topic. So if you want to know how it came about, go and listen to last week's podcast as well, okay? But the word of today is the word proactive, which in my opinion is overly said but underutilized. So during our training sessions and in fact many meetings, we've heard leaders say this. I want my people to be a bit more proactive. I want my fresh grads to be proactive. Even some people say I need to be more proactive. But what actually does proactive means? So we're gonna ask by Jason here. What does proactive means to you?
Cool. I Let me go first. Asma, thank you. I think proactive generally starts with being prepared, knowing on how to be prepared on where you are at, and knowing on being prepared on where you want to go. So yes, in general, being prepared.
I like that, short and precise. What about you, Aspa? What is proactive?
Since I'm the long-winded one, I'm going to give a short and precise answer too. Okay, so so for me, my proactiveness, what it means to me is being. I like to separate it. Being a pro in what you do with the activities that you do. Proactive. So yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. I'm going to really touch base on that. Okay, so now, Asfa, go to you first, okay? Now,
Right.
you like this word pro and active, right? And I want to bring this to leaders. As leaders, we always say, I want my people to be proactive. So, what do you think they are expecting the trait of their team members? How do somebody become pro at the activity they are doing in order to be considered proactive?
So here's the thing, right? Proactive, like what I mentioned, being a pro in the activities that you do. So I would say a staff lah. I say as a employee of the company, right? You need to know, first of all, you need to know your job. You need to know what you are doing and be good at it first, right? Don't you just join the company, you want to jump on other things, but your work is not even I would say a pro yet, and then you want to be proactive in other areas, right? So being that's why I say bring pro at the activities that you do. So for example, when you join into whichever department you are in, be a pro in that department first. All right. Once you already know the everything, the ins and outs and everything like that, once the leaders already I would say uh, trust you and believe that you can do your work, and then you can be a proactive in other departments again. You know, so I will elaborate this later for a hack lah, I would say. Okay, I'll just pass it to Jason. But to sum it all up, be a pro in the activities that you do in your department first, and then after that you can go on from there. All right,
Very good.
Jason, go
Actually,
ahead.
before Jason
That.
continue, I would like to really elaborate on touch base about that really quickly, because a lot of times people are very eager to jump and they're very eager to explore. We are very curious human beings. In other words, very capable lah. We need to delve,
Sure.
try in different areas, and we see like, oh, that person's job very cool. I should do that too. That kind of perspective. So I really like that. Being good at what you're doing. So even if you have the most basic job, make sure you can do it with your eyes closed before you decide to try other things or be proactive in other areas in some sense, which is a very common problem with all our fresh graduates, because today we have a lot of every company wants this. They want the creme de la creme. They want the best of the best.
100%.
Everybody wants that, right? I mean, like, I wouldn't want to marry somebody who's second par anyway. You want the best of the best in some say. So it's true. So when you're actually looking at a management trainee or a graduate trainee, all these management training program, graduate training program, everybody hide the best of the best. And then everybody have the same problem. I tell you, my management trainee program people so excited to do big, big things. Basic job also cannot do, but they want to do everything in the world. So, Jason, this is a question for you. Okay. Everybody then said, yeah, but you say be proactive, right? So I'm being proactive lah. So what is proactive in the eyes of a fresh grad?
Uh, good, good. I think both of the answer for Aspa and Mallory. If you or to those who's listening right now, go check out the previous episode. Whatever they said, legit, we have answered it last week itself for the whole what's the word, from being good at what you're doing and from being in contribution. So many of us want to contribute big projects, but we've answered it last week already. But another thing for those for whoever's listening today for this podcast specifically, to become proactive, like what Aspa mentioned, I think I would just want to quote, but that to echo it again, to really be pro of what you're doing, to be really curious and take it step by step. So many of us think that being proactiveness is jumping queue to jump or Mallory called it just now, being capo in every and any other thing. So instead of jaga, okay, the Malay thing, jaga kain tepi orang lain. So instead of taking care of or kepoing someone else's job or someone else's department, why not be curious and inquisitive of your own department, of your own job? A simple question to ask yourself is, how can I do this faster? What can I do more in this department, in this field, for this period of time? So many of us are thinking so big stuffs that we are not asking ourselves, what can we do now? Because proactiveness is generally asking that question, and your brain or your body or the universe will generally give you that answer itself. So it's asking that question to begin with, whatever you
That's
can
a,
control now.
that's a very, very good question. Now, I'd like to tie back to your word be prepared. And then on top of being prepared is also with, being curious with where you are based at and ask yourself, how can you do things better and faster, right? So if let's say I'm a fresh grad, you just joined the company day one, you got to make that first impression that is gonna, I hired the right person. So how can somebody be proactive yet knows their boundaries, especially a fresh grad? What would you recommend them to do?
I think the first one would be overperforming what you are tasked to do first, and then asking first is to overperform, like what Asfa said, being a pro at it, overperform first, and then the other one is be prepared of the company culture. So if you are jumping into a fast moving FMCG, you have to know that you are needed to be fast. Your deliverables need to be fast. You need to know that you need to be constantly asking questions. Everything are constantly in change. If you are towards a banking industry or old traditional industry, asking questions may not really be a thing yet, because that is their line of limit. That's their boundary. So start off with doing whatever you can first, then only start asking questions. In general, being prepared of knowing their culture, knowing who the people at, knowing who their stakeholder is, and then working around there, especially for fresh grads. Because if you're working in a startup, definitely you need to go and read yourself more, do your own research, because that's what I face as well. Knowing my own stuff, given what's the word? At the first few months, it took me some time to adjust. But yes, knowing what you can do right now, and which field and who you're playing it with.
Very
Yeah.
good. Actually, it's very true. And I really hope all the fresh grads out there and new hires out there actually understand what proactive is now. So nobody expect you to come in with bombastic ideas. Don't worry, we understand you just graduated. Okay. But on the other hand, we expect you to ask questions based on your job. Be curious about how can you want to learn and further develop yourself better in a step-by-step manner. And I really like this. Be prepared with the culture. It's okay to ask. Now, speaking of asking, it's also important for you to manage expectation. So I'm going to take the shift away from the fresher and go to our, coming up managers. So imagine you're working in a company for about a year or two. It's about time you get your promotion and things like that. So now, Asfa, I'd like to ask you this question.
Yeah.
As people who are moving up the ranks, okay, now I assume, with your pro and your active, this person's really pro at what they do. And they
Yeah.
already start exploring, I should get my promotion now and I should start moving towards my promotion now. How should we do it? How do we proactively seek the next step in our career?
Okay. So So actually, that is my mini hack. So I think our minding too strong, Mel, but yes. Anyways, so I would say that for a person that's already pro inside what they're doing, and then they are already at a certain level, they want to go to the next step, right? I would say that being proactive at that stage, let's say for example, assistant manager going to a manager, manager going to be a top manager, and etc, right? So when you are at that stage that you already know your work, try to be pro in other areas inside the organization to relate it to your work. What do I mean by that? So, for example, I just give you my personal experience before. When I was inside property development, okay, I was a young chico at the time, okay, like 21 years old. And I, like I said, I am being pro with what I'm doing. I already pro with my department, and I learn in the other departments. So when a task was given to me, okay, from my department, I counter into I count no, sorry, I factor in all the other departments tasks also in my head. Okay, so it's like, okay, so this department asked me to do this. Okay, the finance department would require me to get this figures in. All right, and then after that, go on and so forth. So that's when I start thinking about other departments and being more proactive of how can that whole track work together, and I alone find all of the sources, find all of the being proactive, getting all of my answers, and then once I've delivered my work, I thought it through all of it. And then that's when people can see your proactiveness. Instead of asking, you're already doing things already in the next step. Think 2 to 3 steps ahead already. In this context, it's much easier for you to understand. Is things 2 to 3 steps ahead, or not only in your department but the whole company as a whole. All right. So yeah, that's my thing for
I really like that. I think that's something that even the fresh grads can relate that as
yeah.
well, because eventually it's about putting yourself in the other people's shoe in some sense, and
Yep.
understand that, okay, if for example, if let's say you have a boss who is very analytical, everything about this boss has to be results and data driven. You don't just walk up to your boss and say, boss, I have a dream. The dream is to bring this in, okay? I mean, your boss will go like, uh-huh, good idea, but proof, please, if you have a boss like that. On the other hand, if you have a boss that is very strategic, your boss, like, basically he can think 2 to 3 steps in a chess game. So before you even go to your boss with an idea, make sure you think, okay, worst case scenario, if this happens, how? Best case scenario, this happens, how? Think a few steps ahead. And a lot of as cliche as it sounds, a lot of people like to ask this question: how do I improve my thinking skills? I'm so sorry. The most cliche answer I can give you is think. As cliche as it sounds,
My favorite one.
because thinking is a habit. To prove
That's
you,
true.
to prove it to you, right? If I ask somebody, or you just ask anybody, what do you want to eat for lunch? I guarantee you, most people will answer anything lah. You
I don't
decide.
know.
I don't know. Jason is one of them. And what happens with this style answer is you become a habit. You just don't bother thinking. And eventually, that's how you are at work. Everything your boss, everything you have a question that comes up, before you Google and research, you ask, because you don't bother thinking. So with that that kind of wraps up our whole session today. So I'm just going to give you a full 3 key pointers recap about being proactive. Okay, the first thing we talk about what is proactive. So I also mentioned a bit about being pro at what you're doing before you try and explore other aspects. And Jason mentioned a lot about being prepared, and what to be prepared about: understanding the culture, understanding the people you're going to work with, know the stakeholders, so that you know how to deliver what they expect you to deliver. And once you're good at what you're doing and you're clear at what you're doing, that's where Asfa go into step 2, which is start exploring other side routes that ties back to your career growth. Of course, it comes back to the question, what do you want in your career? But that's another topic. However, at this point, we're talking about thinking 2 to 3 steps ahead, which fresh grads can also take and apply, because you can't be a fresh grad forever. Eventually, you're going to be experienced higher and you want to move up the ranks, right? So moving up the ranks means, how do you think 2 to 3 steps ahead and start being proactive in those areas? So in other words, proactive is not that difficult, and doesn't mean you need to bring in huge ideas as well. It's just a matter about, think of it as playing a video game. Congratulations, you've completed level 1. Now what do you need to do to reach level 2, 3, 4, 5, and eventually fight the big boss? Okay, so with that,
Fight the big boss. Don't fight the big boss, okay?
I mean,
Work with the
work
big
with the
boss.
big boss, okay? But I mean, video
Gamified
game
analogy.
perspective, right? But you know what I'm saying. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in and for listening to our podcast, and of course, continue to subscribe to us, and see you in the next round. Take care
Thank
and
you.
be safe.
Goodbye,
Thank-
everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Stay
Care.
safe. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this episode. We are here to inspire, so we really appreciate your support. Do share this to those people who you know can benefit from this podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe all of our channels: Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Take care and see you all soon.